Hello, hello. Welcome to another Developer Office Hours on YouTube. This is a global event, happens every 2 weeks, and we're really happy to have you here with us. Now, for the first section, let me start with announcements. This is the part where we talk to you about the latest and greatest news about the VTEX product, how it affects you, the developer, and how you can leverage the latest features. So for the first announcement, I'm going to call Ricardo, and he'll talk to us about the new Save User Data opt-in feature. Hey, Ricardo, how's it going?
Hi, George. How are you? Good. I'm good.
Pretty good.
Okay, today I'm going to show you two announcements. The first one is the new feature called Save User Data Opt-in. It's a feature that we create here in VTEX to be, among other solutions that we have here, to be in compliance with the regulations that we have around the world. For example, we have here in Brazil the General Data Protection Law, and we have in Europe the General Data Protection Regulation that promotes the preservation and protection of the consumer data. That's so important. Basically, this feature we are creating two new checkboxes that will be available on the checkout screen. So with these checkboxes, we allow the customer to have the option to decide if they want to store their personal and payment details for future purchase. For example, if they decide to use the smart checkout, use the email, right? So it's a feature that can be enabled so fast. You just need to make three requests, so it's easy, quick to do it. When you have this feature enabled, this checkbox will appear in the contact information, that's the personal data, and the payment information that we have here. It's very important to mention that's not allowed for the customer to save only the payment information. If they decide to save the information, they need to save both the personal information and the payment information, right?
Of course, we need to be
So
able to link both, right? Otherwise,
exactly,
like,
exactly.
how can we store? Where will we store the payment information? That makes sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it's very useful, right? I mean, with all these data protection laws, there are many customers that are concerned, these shoppers going through our stores, and they're concerned, where is my data being used? And although smart checkout is, killer feature, it's very convenient. Come back and you can buy right away. Some people aren't 100% comfortable with that these days. So this is a new thing for stores to be able to provide that option if they want to, right?
Exactly. We are giving the freedom of decision for the customer.
Awesome, awesome. That looks good. And you have another announcement for us today, right, Ricardo?
Exactly. We can move on. We have the card information that it's maximum storage time reduced from 6 to 3 months. Here in the text, we have the order form ID, that basically a parameter that we have that's responsible to identify a card. So using this order form ID, this identification, we can check exactly what we have in that card. For example, the items, the payment method, delivery channel, etc., etc. And in the past, we using the same order form ID, you could have uh, access the card's information for up to 6 months. But it's a question of infrastructure decision that we have here. And we check that in the past, most of our clients, the merchants, they are not using this information after this period of the 3 months. So we decided to reduce to 3 months, right? But from now on, this card information will be available only for 3 months, right? And after that, the order form ID can be reassigned automatically, something automatic, to a new card created. But at the same time, it's important to mention that it will not affect the information that you use when you decide to send abandoned card emails, because this information comes from the user profile data that's in the master data. So it's other stuff. And then it represents only the items from the last card. So for the shared card, we have this modification, reduced from 6 to 3 months, but the abandoned card is still the same.
Got it. So, just to summarize to developers, if you're relying on stability of order form IDs for any integration, maybe that will affect you if you need it for over 3 months. But in general, that's not the case. Uh, so, if you really needed that same exact cart, that duration will go to 3 months. But usually that's only used when you're in the shared cart scenario. That is, you have a cart that's loaded in one computer, then you want to keep going with the same session on another computer, or you want to do like assisted sales. That's the case for shared cart, where the same order form ID is used. But abandoned cart emails, that's the most used feature. We basically write down a list of all the products that were in the cart, store it with the user profile, and reload it in a new cart once you need it. So if you're just talking about abandoned cart, no problem there. It's very good for us to let people know this is an infrastructure decision, but it shouldn't affect any customers, right? Got it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Just for for your information. Thanks, Ricardo, for these
Thanks,
updates.
George.
Hope to see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye bye. Okay, so for the next announcement, let me call Chile or Lucas. How are you, Chile?
Hey George, I'm good and you, man.
Pretty good. So, what about partial invoices? What changed?
Awesome, awesome. So basically now partial invoices are fully settled by OMS, which is the order management system, and our payment gateway, the VTEX payment gateway. So let me just start by explaining how it worked before, right? So previously, whenever the user or the integration added a partial invoice to the order management system, the OMS, used to settle all the transaction value on the VTEX payment gateway. So as a result of this operation, the order transaction was already finished since there wasn't any value left to be canceled or settled anymore, right? So this behavior was okay for most of the order flows, right? It didn't affect common order flows. So for instance, previously, if the user added a second invoice with the rest of the order value, the system would accept it and the order would be totally invoiced as expected, and nothing else would be done with the already finished transaction, right? So you may ask me, why did it change, right? If most of the other scenarios were already okay. So the issue happened on specific cancellation order scenarios. It was like when the user tried to change the order with some discount applied on it, right? So for instance, if the user had to cancel one of the items after adding a partial invoice, the order management system blocked this operation since the transaction was already finished, right? So, in other words, nothing could be done with this transaction since it already received all the settlements when the first partial invoice was received, right?
Mhm.
So, what was changed after this update? So after this update, the OMS started to settle the exact amount being invoiced, right? So if a partial invoice is added now, the transaction will go to the settling status instead of going to the finished status, waiting for the rest of the value to be canceled or settled. So since the transaction will still be open to new settlements or cancellations now, the user or the integration, right, will now be able to cancel one of the items of this order after adding this partial invoice. So the value being canceled on the order will also be canceled on the transaction, and the shopper will be refunded as expected, right? So how will it affect the developers? So if you're a developer that works on top of our VTEX platform using the OMS APIs, you shouldn't be concerned about changes on the requests and the contracts being sent to the change order and the put invoice APIs, right? Because they'll be exactly the same as before. So also the order flow didn't change. We didn't add any new status to the order, right? So the statuses are still the same, and the behavior regarding the order workflow is it is kept the same, right? So it's exactly the same as before. The only thing that changes is the behavior of the transaction itself, right? So now transactions, they will go to the settling status, which already existed, was already a mapped status on the payments gateway platform, instead of going to the finished status after a partial invoice is added to the order. So we've just enabled operations after partial invoices. Now the user can do change order after the partial invoice. It doesn't have to know all the operations that needed to change before doing partial invoices. That's basically it.
That's really nice. So basically, we have more consistent behavior between our payments gateway and our orders flow, and that gives merchants peace of mind that
Exactly.
if they cancel something, this is going to be refunded. Everything is in peace, in
Yeah.
Narnia, so everyone's
Yeah.
fine. Okay,
Exactly.
that's really great news. Thanks, Chile, for coming and joining us and
My
explaining this
pleasure,
change.
man.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right, so up next we have Gabriel, and he'll be talking to us about assembly options, an awesome feature, especially for hamburgers, I guess. What are the use cases for assembly options, Gabriel?
Oh, there is a lot of products that you can customize. There's a lot of structures that you can create. So with the new admin UI for assembly options, we make it easier to configure it, right? And I will show you a quick demo to explain it better. So I think you're seeing my screen.
Yep.
Uh, uh, as George said, it's really good for burgers. So this is my example. When you are going to buy a burger, you can customize the product. Like I want extra cheese. I don't want pickles on my burger. I want it to be part of a combo. And each of these items, each of these customizations have a price. It will increase the cost in the end of the flow. So you have a really big structure relating SKUs to different SKUs to a product to a price table. So when we're talking about assembly options, we're talking about this structure. VTEX already allows you to create it, but as we had before, it was kind of confusing because it all this complex structure was based on a simple syntax, on a simple string that had no validations. It was easy to commit some errors. So
So the syntax was complex, but it was in a simple string, right? So it's hard for us to build it, actually, right?
yeah, it's hard to validate if something is wrong, to validate if you've put it the right name, the right SKUID. So it was a simple string, but it was not a simple process.
Do you have an example to show just of the actual syntax? 'Cause
uh,
I'm familiar, but it's just so people can take a look, maybe in
right,
the documentation.
we have a documentation that will help you understand a lot about the syntax. You just look for assembly options, VTEX on Google, and the old way of registering it is here. So you have only one string. Each part of the string is related to a specific configuration, like the group quantity. Then you have the SKUs. Then you have the SKU quantity, the price table it's related to. And if you have a really complex structure, this string can get really big.
Yeah, my brain is like already burning with this information. Like I'm almost getting a little bit of blood here, like Stranger Things. Like I need to
So
go
i-
psychic here.
imagine doing it for about 20 products. It will
Yeah.
get really confusing.
So the news is that you guys built an app to help this customization, right, Gabriel?
Yeah, we created new screens and a new flow for you to register it, to configure it, and if you want to delete the item, create a lot of different options for people who want to use assembly option. So now we have a new option here on the sidebar that will get us to this page that is listing all the current assembly options on my store. Here I list all the assembly options. I can make some actions like editing, deleting, and I can create a new one. I can search. So here, if you have a lot of these structures, it will be really easy to search for them, to know what is happening, if it's required, what is its status. So this is the new screen, the listing screen. And to give you an example of the creating and editing screen, here is the burger components. So what I do here is being related to what is being shown here. And basically, the new flow is that you will configure a name for the entire assembly option, the if it's active, if it's required, and then you start creating SKU groups. In this case, the SKU group is for extras. So I have the cheese, I have the pickles, but if you want to create another group like fries and related to the SKU fry size to add it with your order. But here I have an SKU group, the minimum and maximum quantity that these groups accept, and I start adding the SKUs, and each SKU will have its own information like SKU ID, table price that it's related to, price table, sorry,
Don't worry.
and the quantity you can add to each of these SKUs that will be limited in the end by the quantity of the group. So if we try to add more than 3 SKUs here, it won't allow me. So it is responding to a really complex structure that is based on price tables, that is based on quantities over quantities, and making it in the new process, in the new flow. It's really it's more user friendly than what we had before. We have validations now, so if I just take out the name, it will show me an error that is this field is required. So I need a name, and it
The
will.
name is what actually shows up in the checkout, right? Like, I mean, in the product page, right? As a header.
Right, yes. So
So
I
like
have
where you
the,
say you see extras.
yeah, and each SKU is an SKU created on our catalog that is related here. So what we're basically doing is relating SKUs and its price tables with another product for it to be customizable and added with the product to the flow, the order flow. So if I click here on adding to my cart, I will get the burger, my extra cheese, my extra pickle, and the final price will be the sum of all of its items.
So do store developers have to customize anything in their theme for that block to show up, or is that part of the standard functionality? If you have like assembly options configured for that product, it'll show up either way.
Yeah, if the developers are using our start team, it will be there's a block that it will be already there. I'll try to remember its name. I think it's product customizer. So
Okay.
if you're using the start team and IO, you can add the product customizer, and it will search for the assembly options that are related here, and it will be shown on the final screen here. So
So
this
all
is,
kinds of customizations, not only assembly options, but this is a very advanced and very weighted feature, right? So that's great news.
yeah. The product customizer will get every kind of attachment you have on the product, and as assembly option is an attachment, it will work here as well.
Awesome. So back to my screen here. Quick summary then. There's a new app. Your team developed it. Thanks for doing that. People have been waiting for that for a long time. So now assembly options don't have to be complicated. You don't need to get a you know brain damage from trying to understand the syntax. You just use the UI, works well, and use the product customizer block to make sure that those options appear. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. The new app is already available on App Store, so everyone that wants to use it, just click there, install on the store you're working with, and use it to its full extent.
Awesome.
And if people like the product, we can try to present a more detailed specifications about the technology, the process, what we're
The
using.
architecture, right? How did you
Yeah,
build it? I mean, it's an admin app with a bunch of really interesting features.
yeah.
Thanks
So
for
please,
offering them.
people, comment below if you want more explanations. Thanks a lot, George.
Nice. Thanks, Gabriel. Hope to see you back here with the demo. See you
Me
soon.
too.
Bye-bye. All right, so moving on ahead, um, just a quick reminder that you can check out our changelog for more updates. So that's developer.vtex.com/changelog. These and other news are always posted there first. So moving on to the next section, ask the community. This is the place where you ask and we answer. VTEX Community is a Stack Overflow of sorts for VTEX. And every week, every office hours, we select a few questions, try to answer them live. This week we have fewer than usual, but I'm here with you to answer some of them. Let's start with Mariana's question. So Mariana, she's always making great questions for us here in VTEX Community. Thanks for your question, Mariana. She's asking like, hey, I'm having trouble changing the background color of the search bar without changing the background color of other inputs on the website. So how do you do that? Okay, so let me get out of full screen and go to the question. We actually got a great input by Andre Miani. He shared the CSS handles for store customization documentation, and he taught us a bit about the inspect query string. When you're looking at a developer workspace in your browser, you can add that, and you'll get a very special introspector or inspector tool just to really understand the CSS classes that are involved. That really helps you understand what to customize and how do you actually access the exact component. Mariana still had some issues while doing that. She said, I can't change the background of that input without changing the background of the newsletter. And that was a little bit confusing to me because I didn't know which store she was working on. So I didn't really have the context to answer. So really big tip for you guys sharing questions in VTEX Community. Give us, store links, workspaces, anything that we can do to really understand where you're coming from. If you have code snippets, that's always useful for us to debug with you. But I did my own digging, and I found out she was actually working on sports, really nice sports store in Argentina. And actually looking into it, looks like she already figured it out because this menu color is black, and the newsletter she was talking about, I guess, is this. So she was having a little bit of trouble, but she figured it out. So congrats, Mariana, for figuring it out. I added some more context either way. I think back then what she was having trouble with was she had missed the block class part of the documentation, where we say that you can add a specific class to a block in your store that allows you to identify that specific component, right? That's a specific block. So just looking into the documentation here for using CSS handles for store customization that Andrea mentioned. So there's the add inspect to the URL of the page, correct? And remember, you always have to be in a development workspace with this syntax here. And when you hover, I'm going to show you this live, but you see this kind of situation here where you get the actual CSS class, the app, and if you have any block classes, it'll show up as well. So we have a bunch of callouts and images and so on. So she might have missed this part, which is to independently customize a single menu item, you can use block class. So how do you use block class? When you have your JSON file for your blocks in your store framework template, you can add a prop that's called block class, and you can add whatever name you want. It's a unique identifier. And when you do that, the inspector tool will show you a different class that's more targeted to that, item. So for instance, you could just change the decoration item here without affecting the others. So there are some best practices here, and CSS selectors have changed across the latest updates, but the basic idea is exactly what Andre had shared. Now, for a specific example here, so I have my own workspace in my own test account cosmetics too, and I'm doing the inspection thing. When I go through different sections of my website, I see which app exports that front-end component and which CSS classes are applied and which blocks are linked to that and so on. And sorry for my cough. I hope that it doesn't impair your experience there. So some of these don't have block class, but you'll see that this one has a block class. So you see main header there. That's a block class, and that's something you can use to target that whole bar specifically, as opposed to, for instance, the newsletter component, which is dot container, right? So if I had dot container here and I had dot container here, for instance, that would be a way for you to differentiate both of them. So yeah, that's what I had for this question. Now I'm going to move on to the next one, showing similar products using shelf-related products. So Narendra, it's been a while, but glad you're back here to VTEX Community. Narendra has had a question about the shelf-related products block. So he wanted to show similars and accessories in a product page, and they weren't showing at all. So he was wondering what the situation was. So there's one thing I answered here which was the shelf-related products block is now deprecated. So that's something we announced 4 months ago here in office hours. Basically, we're not evolving this block anymore. That doesn't mean it doesn't work, so it should be working, especially for this kind of situation that's very simple. We're not using navigation data to update. We're just, getting the catalog data. So I wanted to understand a little bit better what was going on in his case. Either way, we have a new recommendation. So building a shelf is the new guide that will explain how to build a shelf from zero in different contexts, either in your home page or in a product details page. That's super useful. Pretty fresh documentation that goes through every step of the way. So definitely recommend looking into it. But some things that I looked into my own store that I thought were useful. Sometimes a product isn't active, and because it isn't active, it won't show in your shelf. Sometimes it's out of stock, and when you look into the shelf documentation and you go into shelf-related products, you have some props, right? So recommendation is the prop that will tell you whether you're getting similars or accessories, for instance, and the default value is similars. You also have the hide out of stock items, and the default is false, so you don't hide out of stock items. But if you did configure that to true, then maybe the product won't show because it's out of stock. That's what I was talking about here. And did you add the required props, especially summary and product lists? So when I started using this, I saw that you have this prop called product lists that needs to follow product list schema, and the default value is undefined. So if you don't have a summary, for instance, here, you'll get an issue building your store because it says like, hey, you don't have a product summary schema defined. So I don't know what to show. I don't know if I show only the pictures or if I show add to cart. So that's what the product summary shelf block and schema works. So this kind of thing needs to show, right? You need to have the context, and you need to have what needs to show. Is it the name, the description, image, price, etc.? That's why the build a shelf guide is so useful, because it goes through step by step how you would go about doing that. So yeah, we need more information, Narendra. So if you could share, let's keep going through this question. I'd love to build a shelf with you. All right. So that's what we have for today. Just a quick reminder, every 2 weeks we're here. We're trying to pick up the pace with more questions. The more people watching, the more incentive we have. So make sure you like this video, add your comment, let us know if you're liking this office hours live transmission every couple of weeks. And if you have any questions and you really want us to see it and feature it here, don't forget to add the office hours tag, and we'll make sure to answer it live the next office hours. Usually we have demo time here as well. That's the space that I love. Anyone from VTEX or anyone from the community. So if you're a partner agency developer or a developer in a customer's team, you can come here and show the great work you've been doing. So if you develop an app or a new store theme, or you learned something you'd like to share with us, this is the space for you to do that. Unfortunately, we don't have a demo today, but if you'd like to present a demo, please fill in this form, community.vtex.com/office hours global. We'll be more than happy to have you here, interact with you, and learn from you. So that's what we have for today. Thank you for watching. It's been a blast. Next time around, we'll have Alex again, and I'll be helping out in the background for sure. But until then, see you soon. Bye-bye.